The last time we linked up on the Situationship Circle,
I feel like if I'm forcing my child to do something and they don't want to do it and they have voiced the fact that they don't want to do it and they have a reason as to why they don't want to do it, why am I going to make them do it?
You have to parent your child for who that child is. And if you are forcing your child into a mold because that is what you expect, then you're not communicating no matter how much you talk. You're just not communicating.
I truly believe now in my life that family is deeper than the bloodline.
Boundaries have to be in place with communication. It does not matter that there are parents. It does not matter that there are siblings, our uncles, our aunts. Boundaries have to be, our children, they have to be established. You cannot have thorough communication without a boundary.
Now here's part 2.
I believe if it's to the point where you're being disrespectful, when you're crossing those boundaries, I believe that you communicate those boundaries. If you cross the line and you cross the boundary, yes, you'll get that ass whooped. However, I believe so. I don't beat Carter because he spilled his milk. Let's talk about it. But at the moment that he took off his shoe a few weeks ago and threw it at my face, he got his behind whooped. You communicate boundaries. You communicate those things. However, I feel like it's to a point where beating isn't always the answer. If you mess up, if you make a mistake, that's always the answer. No, I feel like there's stages to it. Like, are we gonna talk about it? We may take a phone, but if you curse at me, if you disrespect me, if you disrespect your mother, you're gonna get your ass whooped. All right,
Can I get 60 seconds? So I'm gonna just go ahead. You already got your 60 seconds.
All right.
I use it wisely.
49, 48.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with my parents. I was raised in a home where I feel like I was blessed. I had parents who really took their time with me growing up. My mom was really like a self-taught psychologist. My dad like leads by example. My dad is like, he can't do any wrong. Like my dad is so straight and narrow. And he really doesn't talk to me a whole lot. But he just like demonstrates to me the kind of man I should be. My mom, on the other hand, is a talker. She's like my psychologist. So I'll make 2 points. So to your point about what is the solution to trying to break, patterns of like patterns we want to break in our families, right? I feel like one of the things my parents, in particular my mom, did with me growing up was she was vulnerable with me. She told me about her mistakes and things like that she had made. And my dad, as I got older, became more vulnerable with me. Now, being vulnerable with your kids takes a mature child. So you have to wait till your child is ready to hear certain things. But I feel like those were the moments with my parents where I felt like I was connected to them. They understood where I was coming from because like they were just like me. My mom always says like the only difference between you and I is I got here before you did. So you can take what I say to you and use it, or you cannot, but I'm just letting you know I got here before you, so let me share something with you. And then the other thing that she used to do, and my parents used to do, was, I kind of want to like Kyle talk, kind of distracted me, but they were, my mom, one of the best moments with my mom was when she and I didn't see eye to eye when I was like 16 or 17 years old on something, and she said to me that she was trying to grow with me. She was like, I understand where you're coming from, I see we're not understanding each other, but just know, son, I'm trying to grow with you, and just help me grow with you, because I'm always gonna be your mother, but I'm trying to be the best mother that you need me to be at whatever point in life you are. And so I think if you're vulnerable with your kids, I feel like that's to me going on the road to sort of healing some of these things we want to break in our family.
Can I ask a question to his perspective?
Yeah.
Because I love all of that. Like that's beautiful.
Yeah.
At what point, because this is something that I'm gonna have to learn moving forward as well, and just everybody, at what point do you become vulnerable with your child? Like some 11-year-olds are more mature. Like, is it case by case? Or because what if I feel like a lot of times when you are vulnerable, it may have been too late, or your vulnerabilities come out when your kid makes a mistake, and then it's like, well, why didn't you tell me that before I made that? Like, I feel like being vulnerable early helps you develop a stronger relationship and not really using it as like, oh, he's only 6, so he won't be able to understand yet, so maybe we'll wait until he's 11?
You have
Like,
to,
what
you have to
time?
gauge how you say and what you say based on their age and their maturity, I would say.
And off my experience, I think when you have a kid, it is your obligation to first initiate your vulnerability, to make them comfortable to be vulnerable back to you. Kids growing up, they don't know their emotion. We don't even know what it is. But when we cry, we don't know what that means. But when we see our parent who cares, who loves us, be vulnerable with us and care, and like you said, he was so fortunate to have that experience, have them interested in your opinion or your safety more mentally than exterior-wise, it makes them more comfortable to be like, Dad, blah, 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 blah.
Because I feel like kids want to know, like, a few months ago, I was really down and I was really emotional and Carter was over the house. And he literally sensed it, and he came in there, he went into my bathroom, grabbed tissue, and he was like, Daddy, are you okay? And then I just broke down and started crying. I'm like he knew. So it's just like, when do you open up to your kids and like have that conversation, like, look, this is what's going on.
And how old did you say he's?
He's 2, so obviously not now.
My dad again is like very reserved in what he says to me. But I remember when I was in 6th grade, he found a love letter I had written to somebody. Like I had mistakenly left on the floor somewhere. He saw it, right? And so
Don't steal on the sneaky parent.
Right, my dad. So he brought me into the room, sat me down, and just basically told me that, you know, from here going forward, that if I'm having a relationship with a young girl in school or whatever, if I'm having trouble on whatever level, emotionally, I'm thinking about sex, he was like, come to me and talk to me about these things. And the reason he said that was because when he was growing up, like, he was always constantly teased about girls. Like, you know, people never took him seriously. People never took his emotions seriously. Like, you know, no offense to my grandmother, my grandfather, but different times or whatever, he just remembered, like, he couldn't talk to anybody about anything. He couldn't express himself if some girl broke his heart and things like that. And so when he said that to me, I was like, wow, like, okay, I guess I will talk to you about, you know, whatever. And like we established a deeper bond, like, from that moment forward. But it wasn't because tell me when he didn't force me to play sports and say, tell me whenever you are interested in somebody, you tell me everything. It was like this sort of coaxing, sort of like just like
opening the door,
opening the door, right? Just loving interaction. Like, I care about you, and I care so much, and I'm sharing with you how I was hurt in my past. Yeah. We're gonna fix that today. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
All right. So.
I feel like it's a balance though, because kids have a tendency to take on whatever burden their parents are feeling too. So it's like but that could be a result of not knowing enough information. So if I see you sad, I feel like it's because of me, like, because you didn't say that it's something that happened at work. So I think I'm doing something wrong that's making you upset or making you angry. So I think it still goes back to like communication. I feel like a lot of, well, speaking from my family, like black families don't know how to communicate with each other.
Kids need reassurance.
Yeah.
And I think it's a part of when we get to a point where we learn how to balance that. Like, even at 2 months, we learn how to balance different things with our children. We learn how to speak to them. You know, you don't yell at them. You speak to them in a certain way.
Until
So
they
I
get
think,
to a certain age, then you start yelling at them.
but then as you yell, you have to back up. You learn how to have those balances. You know, I think it's important that we create balances because we have to know when, why, how we want to keep the road open. Because if we get too hard, that road ain't gonna be open.
And you have to be able to also go back and apologize when you do go too hard.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Okay, well sometimes that's not like, I hated that as a kid though. Like, you beat me and then you come back and you tell me why you beat me and then, or give me a hug or like, oh, you wanna go to the mall? Like, you're not my friend, remember you're my mom, okay? You're not my friend.
To that part, I think for me, the times that did happen with like my parents or whatever, like after that fact, like I think honestly for me, those are the moments that brought us more together. Because it did, for me personally, it didn't happen that often. It was more so my sister than me. It was. But like I think for that, I think those are the moments that brought us close because we would have a conversation. And for me, my parents were always open, like talking to me for the most part. But I was the one that was always kind of reserved because I'm just a reserved person. Yeah. So I think having them open up to me first allowed me to be more vulnerable.
That's how vulnerability works across the board.
But so I think also the one.
Let's jump, because we can talk all day.
Talk about being
mine's gonna be, you go ahead, but I'm saying I got something real quick to Scott, what we talked about earlier.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
wait, let me say first, because I know you. I was just gonna say real
really quickly about vulnerability. I think it should come in stages. I feel like my mom was very vulnerable with me very young, but it kind of died off a little bit. My mom had me at 17, so she's a very young mom. She got mature very fast, got into a company, and she still works at that same company now. So I kind of grew up with my mom, kind of grew with my mom, like your mom was saying. But when I was 16 years old, I was a junior in high school, and I came home with a hickey. And yes, I know, but I was just allowed to have a boyfriend. At that point, I was just allowed to have a boyfriend. My mom was like really strict about that. Her household was do as I say or suffer the consequences. You can do whatever you want to do, but if you don't listen to what I have to say, you have to suffer the consequences. So when I came home with that hickey on my neck, I tried to play it off like, oh no, it's not that. And she was like, let me see. And my mom burst into tears. She was like, you don't see me walking around like that. Have you ever seen me looking like that? And at that point, I have never seen my mom cry at me like that. So I think that level of vulnerability, and from that point forward, I have always wanted to be like my mom from that point. I always wanted to be a mirror of the type of woman that she was, because I never seen my mom with a group of guys. I never seen some guy that wasn't her husband or fiance in her face, like ever. I've never seen, even with them, I've never seen my mom with a hickey on her neck. So that really just put things in perspective for me about how I looked at my mom and how she looked at me. So I think vulnerability should come in stages. Like once the prep talks are over, it's just like, you gotta keep it 100% funky with your kids so they know, like, this is where I'm coming from here. I'm not coming from here. And one thing I want to say about whoopings, you couldn't even say the word right. You said spankings and beatings, and then in the same sentence you said, oh, but I'm gonna beat your ass if you do X, Y, and Z. Same as you, Kyle. So I think it's very tricky. We have our mind set on a spanking. In your mind, you may be thinking you're giving your child a spanking, but
you be mad. No. I think it's possible to spank a child and not be mad. I think it's definitely possible to beat a child and be mad. But I also think that it is possible to spank your child and not be mad. I've done it. Because
you should never spank your children upset.
Right. And I think the younger they are, I think as they get older, they outgrow the need for a spanking. But when they're small, sometimes some pain on the ass is all they're gonna understand.
Yep. I don't know, Tracy, I have a question, and it's a conversation that we've had, but I remember you saying that spankings didn't work in a sense.
Beatings don't work.
Or like, I remember it was a conversation we had specifically.
Yes. Okay, yes.
And I'm not gonna put your business on that. So
and it's talking more like along the lines of what he was saying about your children not being who you want them to be. One of my children has some issues. Spanking did not work with him. He had mental issues. He has ODD, ADHD, all that kind of stuff. He doesn't understand the spanking. There was no point in spanking him. There was no point in spanking him. There was no amount of communication. There was no amount of anything that was going to work with him because he did not understand that his actions had consequences. So yeah, there was no point in spanking him.
So with your other kids though, you felt like, and I mean, I know we've had this conversation, but with your other kids though, you felt like did you have to spank your other kids or did you spank?
It depended on which child.
Really?
Like one of my,
it should.
My oldest daughter, I very rarely had to spank her because she just did what she was supposed to do.
I think that creates a challenge, though. That's a thin line because I wasn't the one. Yeah, because the kid starts, oh, he didn't get a spanking, but I got the spanking.
Right.
Now that creates jealousy. So it's like,
my son,
it can't be case by case.
Behavioral issues. My other kids resent him for the attention that he got, and they can't fathom that he had to get that attention. It wasn't fair that he was causing so much pain and he was getting so much focus and they weren't. And it was, the dynamic between them is still difficult.
So we've talked a lot about okay.
Dasha.
Okay, sorry.
Mine's real short in regards to all the spanking stuff. And really in regards to all the talk about children. Your kids gonna need therapy. Like point blank. That's not true, Dasha. No parent is perfect. There's there is no perfect parent. There's no perfect blueprint on how to raise kids.
Or a perfect child.
There's no perfect child. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be communication issues. Everybody's messed up. Everybody messed up. It's just about how you messed up. So you're going to need therapy. You're going to need to heal. I really feel like you have to heal and you have to be self-aware. Like those are the two things that you have to do to grow up and you should know that.
Okay, go ahead, Cole.
And our time is up, people.
I can't.
Talk so bad. I'm gonna get you right here.
I can't turn this one backwards, so I will place it. No, but and before this conversation, these types of conversations, being around people that I'm not typically around, I probably wouldn't have said this because I would have wanted to make sure it was politically correct or whatever the case may be. But we're having these more challenging conversations with people I haven't had the conversations with before. So when we talked about the sports, and I didn't factor in when forcing a kid to play sports necessarily, you know, and trying to make them a man, that wasn't the perspective I think my parents took by making me wrestle. I asked to quit at 9. I gave them valid reasons why I should not wrestle. It is not for me, and get dressed, get ready for practice. We got wrestling practice. It was a hard no. It was a hard no. But what it was, it wasn't trying to making me tough wasn't being a man. But being tough wasn't about being a man or about my sexuality or my preference or if I was a more sensitive person. Because I am a very emotional person. I think I'm a sensitive person. But it was about making me tough. Whether that's a girl or a boy, it doesn't matter. The world is going to be tough. And you're not always going to be able to do what you like to do. And because I'm your parent and you are a child, at this point you will do what I tell you to do when it comes to sports. And
there's a higher purpose for it.
Yeah, and it was about my parents did the exact same thing. Because I'm in a household, yes, of all wrestlers is deemed a tough sport. We were all artists.
Developing discipline and then taking that into
but it taught us skills. Well, I'm just saying, my household was, yes, we had 3 wrestlers, which is deemed to be a tough sport, manly sport, but my brothers are both artists. Like, we went from wrestling practice to, you have easels up and everyone's in the house. But if you were going to do it, we did it hard. But my point is really just that, you know, you're going to have things in life, and your kid's going to have things in life that they're not going to like, that they're going to have to do. There's going to be, now, as a parent, you have to know when they're hitting that point where now you are pushing them beyond. Now they will start resenting you. But there are things you are going to have to make your child do that they're not going to like. You know what I'm saying? It's going to help them in later life. So when I was talking about, yeah, it made me tough, but I think that wasn't saying like, that wasn't my dad or my mom wanting me to try to be you're supposed to be a manly man, you're supposed to be tough. It was, no, you need to be tough because life is going to beat you up. Yeah, you got to be able to persevere and push.
That's a great perspective. Like, that can go, like, not just sports, but like my parents made me clean the kitchen. Like, but when I started, it sets a new standard for like when you're out on your own, you know how to get through things, you know how to handle your own. Like, I feel like Black families do a great job with preparing their kids for life and what life is about to throw at you. You know, I feel
physically.
Yeah.
They do a great job.
Physically, not emotionally.
They do a great job.
Because I'm a wreck
at
to
some
this
point,
day.
it does hurt your child when you take different routes to prove it to them.
So, as we embark on this journey of family dynamics, amazing that you guys are in this space and very vulnerable, but I think it's important that we see these things and we recognize them and we're able to break these cycles. So I want to thank you guys for joining us at the table today. And as always, check us out on social media. And you guys for joining us at the table. Thank you. Y'all
So something that we didn't talk about as much that I wish we would have hit on a little bit more is just the dynamics of having a 2-parent household. I feel like there's always that parent that's a little more strict and that other parent that's a little more nurturing, and it balances out. And I feel like that's kind of a balance that I'd like to have in my household, because I know I'm gonna be just a softie. So I'm gonna need someone who's able to kind of be that reinforcer a little bit. And I think that that really makes a difference when you have both of those examples that you can pull from and learn from as a child as well.
So I said a lot, but I really wanted to just put stress on that a parent's love is purest when you can recognize your child's barriers, you can recognize your child's understandings, and just recognize who your child is as a person, as an individual. Love your kids to that extent. Love from here, don't love from here. That's what you gotta do.
I just want to talk about being, like she was saying, in a two-family home. You have to make sure that you have that connection between the two. Make sure that you're communicating with the mom and with the dad. If the two, if one is telling you one thing and then the other is telling you another, then when you go into that one household, you remember what the father told you, but you don't remember what the mother told you, because now you have two different people telling you two different things. And to speak on vulnerability, I feel like you have to do it at the right time. I waited to be vulnerable with my mother and tell her that something happened to me traumatic in my life when I was a young child. I told her last year. Until that point, we didn't communicate as far as like things that were going on in my life. So I feel like you have to do it at the right time and make sure that they are open with you and receptive to what's going on in your life. Now my mom and I have the best relationship because I was vulnerable with her and now she's vulnerable with me. But it took way too long to get to that point. So just do it at the right time.
So when I was in there, I didn't get a chance to kind of speak more on like the spanking topic. That's like a hot topic within the Black community. I just feel like someone made a really good point earlier about how spanking didn't work with her child, and I feel like people need to realize that disciplining your children is unique to every child. And just like looking at just reflecting on my own experiences, my parents never spanked me when they were mad. Like spanking was never like a reactionary thing that they did to me. It was always for a lesson to be learned, to get a change in behavior. And so my mom would always explain it that way. Whenever we'd have, the wrap up after the spank and everybody hates, like, you're not my friend, like, why are we talking now? You just whooped me. But spanking was always a tool to help me learn. It was never something that was an expression of anger towards me. And I feel like a lot of parents spank their children when they're upset, and I feel like that's the worst possible time to spank your children.
I feel like parenting as a whole is a case-by-case scenario. There's not one set standard or one set expectation to be able to raise all of our children. And I believe that parents need to do a better job with getting to know their children's vulnerabilities, getting to know their emotions, and getting to know truly the best possible route to being able to raise that child. There's no one expectation that's going to raise all of your different children, and we have to be self-aware of ourselves and not raise our kids how we were raised, or the expectation on how we were raised, and do a better job with being vulnerable and getting to know our children so we can be able to paint the best possible futures for them in the future.
So when it came to family dynamic, and we talked a lot about toughness, and everybody kind of jumped up when they asked, what if I have a daughter? It doesn't matter girl or boy for me, when I do have kids. Tough is tough. I want to make sure that my daughter, my son, my kids in general, they're prepared for what the world's going to throw at them. And I have a 7-year-old niece. She's in judo. We put her in sports. She's in different academic camps. She plays violin. We expose her to everything, but whatever she does, we try to do it 110%. So that's how I'm going to raise my kids.
I said, according to you, it doesn't matter if Black males are in this space. It can be anybody as long as they can do the job, because it doesn't matter what they look like. So why do we even need to be trying to take part and be in spaces full of people?
So they said, Kyle, what do you mean we got to reform? Conform, I'm sorry. Oh, because that is some bullshit. The people resting. The people already spoke. So
just to be clear, companies don't hire you because of who you are. They hire you because of what you can do. It's term. No. Listen. In the business that I go out on the weekends, but when Monday through Friday you can't perform, I could care less. I want performance over the relationship. To be honest.
There is no person on this world, in this room, that can tell me, as me dressing the way I do, I don't have to go into a business meeting in a suit and tie to elate. I can dress up casually and show you something that you're not used to.